Local and remote news excellence. We have a lot happening in the industry right now. The main studio rule is ending. All of us are going to be influenced in the news part of the industry, some in various ways. Some are going to be dramatic, some are fairly simple. Many of the local studios will move to news bureaus over the next few years. We'd like to encourage consideration of the best way to address these upcoming changes. Breaking news will still need localized resources in many cases, and we suggest that one thing be considered, which is a hybrid approach of local, regional, and in some cases national, and we have some unique abilities to assist with that. On the right, we have the control sites, rundowns and playlists. That's rundowns from news, playlists from master control. The equipment that is to be controlled can be anywhere, and we've been doing this for 25 years. We're one of the primary innovators in automation, both for news and master control over a long time, serving lots of big broadcasters. So the way that you're going to be able to orchestrate these kinds of improvements to how you operate, I think we can have a very solid contribution to that and would welcome a discussion. Just showing as an example, the control arrow having a different user in a different location. This is not virtualized. It can be, but this is client-server control, which is safer, more secure. There's some other reasons for it. So you can easily change workstations. You can easily change locations and allocate equipment as to where it's needed. You have a TV station go out because of a hurricane, just connect directly to the transmission site and use resources in another location. These kinds of things are very, honestly, kind of easy for us because we've been doing it for so long. And this sort of architecture is something to consider along the way. So one way that we can serve in this capacity is by controlling most everything. We've got the largest library of integrations of APIs and equipment control of any company of the world. And Aveco is the largest independent automation company. If you haven't really been into automation, you may not know much about us, but I'd encourage that to move along as you consider how to grow. So just on the left, we have the suite of tools. We've been doing modular microservices type of things for all of our 25 years, managing aspects of ingest, production automation, MAM, and interfacing with many MAMs, many PAMs, Quantel, Avid, et cetera, and also multiple CMSs. Master control automation tied in with news production, I think, is really something worth considering. After all these years, why do we still have blips of black in going from the PCR to the MCR? It's really time for that to end. It's easy to clean up, and we have a capability of doing master control automation along with news production automation, so you never have a frame of discrepancy, an upcut, or a blip to black. We interface with all newsroom systems, 6 of the majors of the world. Pretty much any equipment that you've come across or any software layer, and we've been honored to pioneer this kind of thing with many major broadcasters. So a key question of what to automate and how. News and show production. There's some news magazine specific tool that I'll mention briefly in a moment. Master control, ingest, workflow for media, multiple PAMs and MAMs, CMSs, operational equipment pooling. That's a big one. And that's something the more techie folks in the news world really love. And operationally, it can have a profound influence on how you run, especially when things get busy. Being an old news guy myself early in my career, everybody knows when a big story happens, the junior people are so enthusiastic they jump forward and grab too many resources. Right? It just is the way it goes. So the senior people, they need the resources. So we have an architecture as part of our pooling control that assigns operational priorities. So the most important people get resources when they need it. Executive producer is in a user category. He says, record this feed. It's going to bump an intern logging footage for a documentary. And this just happens, and it's a lifesaver saves a lot of hair of the ops managers and feeds managers as well. Multi-site, multi-studio control, I would suggest, is a very big deal. This is an example of one system we did where we have 7 studios tied in as one operation. In the history of news production automation, people automate one studio. Oh, you have another studio? Well, that's another automation system. And there has not been a system other than ours that ties together multiple studios effectively. Here you can take a rundown from Studio 1, move it to Studio 2 with one click of a button. That moves across the production switcher control, the graphics, the virtual set, the lighting, the camera robotics, the audio levels, all of it moves with one click. And that's a remarkable capability. And, people are late, people are caught in traffic. Rather than have people standing in the green room getting annoyed, okay, let's move it to the other studio. And it's especially relevant as you anticipate doing multiple studio productions in a hub model of operation. And we'll cover more about that in a moment. So it allows you to maximize a CapEx and lower your OpEx and also improve the on-air quality by doing major events with more flexible capability and tying things together a lot easier. Regional news and ad insertion. There's an ability to control a range of equipment so that you can take a few minutes of a newscast to allocate to respective areas. Throughout the Midwest, here in the U.S. especially, sports is very difficult to cover because the station is covering such a broad geography that you hardly have time to show scores, and people would like to see news highlights and sports highlights. And you can do that very easily. You can sell it very easily. And we can execute that as a part of production automation and as a part of master control. There's multiple models of how we do that. We've done all of these models. For example, you can have a central model like we did for one of Germany's largest broadcasters, one of our key partner companies, I would say. You can do a hub model, which has incoming signal just centrally controlled and going out to places. You can have a dual model, which sometimes it's directly controlling the remote stuff, other times locally controlling, and then throwing it back to a regional or national operation. These kinds of things are old hat for us, and it's really effective. There's an edge model, which has been very useful. Televisa, which moves about $3.5 billion of revenue through the channels that we control, has this wonderful example of regionalized resources that we orchestrate as a part of routine day-to-day operations. And for localized news, sports, and spots, it's really a good enhancement to visibility to accomplish this. So you have a regional national program happening. You can do your breakouts, and breakouts also, by the way, can include your online presence at the level of a head end or translators or your streaming output. Again, these kinds of things are inexpensive. They pay for themselves pretty much instantly, and it's a good example of using the latest technology for something that improves ratings, improves the on-air look, and helps the broadcaster mature. One of the things we did with ARD Group of Germany, they had very high-end news magazines in prime time that they wanted to have an elegant look. We had been automating their newscasts for a long time, and they said, look, we have occasional manual mistakes that are made as we're orchestrating so many things at the same time because we want a high production value. Why don't you develop something with us? So we did. It's called Take Two Studio Production Automation, and it's a revolution in how to produce shows. You have all the studio equipment under control, production switcher, graphics, camera robotics, everything. And you have the ability for a director just to say cut. All right, you have a little NLE-like timeline where you re-cue. Okay, let's pick it up 6 seconds before that guy started coughing. And you press one button, it pre-rolls, and you cut in. And you can do that as many times as you need to. And at the end of the production sequence, okay, let's finish it. Press one button, it auto-compiles all the best takes into a finished production right there, right then. It outputs an EDL for editing touch-up and also outputs MAM markers in case you want to change what cut you decided to take. All right, let's go back to cut 1 instead of cut 3. This is a remarkably efficient way. It saved more than 90% of the budget for this first broadcaster, and they were able to do so many more shows, but more importantly, they were able to do much higher end looking productions on air. This is the whole reason you want to automate is not, in my view, to reduce the number of people. It's to elevate the production values of what you put on air. Sometimes there's some staff shifting, but the opportunity is to do more relevant, faster moving, more elegant television production. By the way, a version of this is extremely relevant for individual story production. We can talk more about that, but this is a new style of desktop production which integrates video conferencing tools and things like that to help story production. We have a social media gateway that's a part of our automation control, both for production and master control. So, for example, right before a story airs, in that class of viewers, send out a tweet automatically. You just have that character definition in the database, and it just happens routinely, minute by minute, hour by hour, for programs, for news, sports, etc. And it's a very common part of news wheel designs, which we pioneered many years back. A core architecture issue is that we're all moving quickly toward the IT space and toward hosting environments, and why is a safe operating system a good idea? We at the core, we have Linux, but we also have a core of QNX, which is an operating system that Cisco uses on their high-end switches for telecom companies and things like that. You find them on satellites and aircraft. And it's never had a single worm or virus. We have user workstations on Windows and Macs and Linux all simultaneously working together. But as we move more toward this interconnected world, the vulnerability to viruses and worms propagating throughout your broadcast enterprise and throughout the operation of your hosting center is something that's a very significant factor. And we feel that it's really worth considering having a core OS that just never has those kinds of issues. So Aveco is a broadcast automation company and MAM provider over all these years. Founders still own and run the place. We have an outstanding track record of on-air performance and maturation of existing facilities around the world. We have, again, the largest library of integrations and APIs, and more than 300 broadcasters around the world are running every day on the air with us. Many are the largest national networks in country after country around the world. And people have stayed with us over time. This sort of partnership is what we are most interested in. We're a company that's going to be here 20, 30, 50 more years. We have a definite architecture for being experts who are trusted in automation. And that's our legacy and our commitment to customers, and we would love to talk more about it individually. Thanks very much.